right. Hey, welcome, folks. Mil-Spec Ops here. It's going to be your SITREP. It's 8/15/2024. Coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. As we get into the deets, this is truly a house of cards. And we really are seeing the true colors of our government right now, because there seems to be nobody behind the wheel. Everybody's on the bus. Ain't nobody driving. You can see it's clearly evident. We hear nothing out of Flashbang. We hear nothing out of Bob Marley, which, hey, listen, it's not breaking my heart that we hear nothing out of them. But at the end of the day, they are setting us up for failure. If they maintain office, I do believe we're going to be in World War III very quickly, because China and Russia right now, I do think, are both licking their chops at just how fragile the United States is at this moment, economically, from an administration, a leadership perspective. It's probably the weakest our country has ever been in our lifetime. Okay, so eyes on it. We got a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of moving pieces. So let's get into it. We're starting it off here over in SkyGlass. And man, there are some new things that have come out. I'm going to share with you here in just a minute when we get into the watch list. It's going to blow your mind. It's a really cool feature in SkyGlass. If you're not using this app, you're missing the big picture, because it truly is different and much, much better than any other flight trackers out there in the world. So, okay. Now, we are looking at about just shy of 200 mil aircraft up. Remember, it's not the what, or sorry, the how many, it's really the what. So quantity, not a big factor as much as exactly what it is over our heads. And to give you a perfect example, we kick this thing up to the side. And these right here, these high flyers, all these Mil Intel balloons, those are going to be basically ISR, right? Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. And then there's some low altitude stuff as well. Let's take a look what's going on with the H-60s currently. You can see the eastern seaboard is chock full of H-60 Black Hawks. And then, of course, the Panhandle, as always, that's a big area. That's going to be mostly training activity. So don't pay too much attention to that. Let's look at the air refuelers, because that do indeed tell a story. And so you can see very concentrated over the center of the United States as always. And we've got 25 air refuelers up on screen, 21. So there's 4 elsewhere in the world. Now I'm going to pop in the 767 Pegasus. That's going to add another 9 to our quiver. And so we're sitting at about 35, roughly 34. And as you can see, coast to coast, very active from an air refueler. Again, big indicator of fighter activity. So let's go take a look at Europe. And you can see it's actually, you got one transitioning across the drink. I do believe that's coming across. It actually could be just out there loitering, but you can see a low altitude one over the North Sea off of England. And then, of course, we get over to this side, and you're going to see a couple. This one is, that's actually a Turkish drone. Don't know why that's showing, but this one is not. These are going to be air refuelers right here over the Mediterranean, very close to Israel. And then, of course, right here in that little pocket near Kuwait, over the Persian Gulf, and then probably servicing stuff up into Iraq and Syria from there. Same with this one. So, all right, let's take these away. Let's take a look at the banana copters. Just out of curiosity, you see what looks to be a low altitude one there in Turkey, one out here in England. That's where we usually see them. I'm going to add 2 more to my quiver because my list seems to not be complete. Back away from that. Let me just see if there's anything else that catches my eye. Here's some more. These, look at these 6. These are all drones, by the way. Low altitude drones manufactured by Turkey. The TB2s are the name of those. Eurofighters, pretty active. That's probably why you see the air refuelers up right here in the same area. They're probably servicing those Eurofighters. And if there's anything else catches my eye, I think we're good there. So let me just show you. We're going to get into the watch list real fast, because this is interesting. New feature that's coming out. This is the beta that I got my hands on. But you see these rings? That's a high altitude Intel balloon, roughly a 300-mile radius below that, which means those things have quite a bit of reach. And you can see any type of the ISR stuff, I've been able to add rings to them to give you an idea of where exactly they are looking. And then you'll see some low altitude stuff there coming out of southern Texas. Southwest Texas, actually, and some E3 Sentry. Again, those are areas that they have the ability to look at closely. And then we've got a teal out there, which is actually going to be just a Hurricane Hunter. Again, look, this is that German balloon. There are 4 more of those up. We just don't have them up right now. We're not seeing them. They're probably up. They're always up. Little E3 Sentries and some R135s give you just a general idea. And then, of course, the Lasai. And then there are all those little low-altitude Turkish drones that are just taking up the whole area. And then more reconnaissance there over the Mediterranean into Israel, and then that low altitude one too. So it gives you kind of a different flavor, different look. It's interesting, to say the least, just how far these things can look, okay? All right, transitioning into that same field, this is going to be the ISR, and these are your Intel aircraft, Lasai, probably some Army intelligence, etc. But just see that really strange pattern that we see out to the Northwest, Midwest. It's kind of a strange, I can't explain it. Normally they do this type of pattern right here where you see the layers and that shoelace look. To see them just kind of branching out, it means they're probably doing some reconnaissance. And then you can see the Malta aspect, and then over Israel covered up. Israel's got a very large campaign going right now. Even though they are in the middle of peace talks, I do find that very interesting because they're not letting up on any level. Probably because the peace talks have always produced zero. Somebody agrees to something, and then they never stand to it. And so Israel says, yeah, I'm just going to press on. These are those low altitude drones. As we get into the drone aspect, notice that the over the water of the Mediterranean, looking at the ship activity for sure. Q4 drone popped up out of Malta, headed over, and you can see it's a broken trace. So it's clearly in the same area as it has been over the last 2 weeks, which is the north side towards Kaliningrad, looking closely at Belarus. And then in the U.S. for the last 3 days, very quiet from a drone perspective. You see something over St. Louis, and then you can see some stuff down over Southern California. And I got nothing in the area of Australia, or maybe a little blip there coming out of Okinawa. So, all right. Let's get into this piece of it. It's going to be the Subhunters. And the big key is just notice that they seem to be running along the coastline there where that Cascadian fault line is off the coast of Oregon and Washington State. And then, of course, you can see just this flurry of activity off the East Coast. But the big thing that really matters is the stuff going on overseas. And you can see near the North Sea to the northern end of England. So if you're up in that area, just remember this thing has ground penetrating radar and all kinds of different capabilities. And I'm not seeing anything in the Middle East, which is very unusual. Same thing with Asia down into Japan, Okinawa. But Australia is active as always, right? Okay, let's look at the Sig Intel. This is going to be your R135s. Remember, 300-mile radius that thing can see an object the size and track an object the size of a soccer ball. Sig Intelligence. So these are the flights that are gathering stuff around Kaliningrad up into probably St. Petersburg in Russia with that, down towards Serbia and Kosovo. And then you get over here into the United States. They are gathering cell tower data, more than likely, satellite phone data. You see this look? That's telling you that they're looking out there in that Utah area. And then, of course, into the Dakotas, as always. And then this one jumping down, looking very closely at Cuba. All right, again, last 3 days. So it's pretty active. All right, and then let's look at the E6 TACAMO, Take Charge Move Out, Navy platform. This is talking to your nukes on your subs. Now, you see this little blip that jumps out over the East Coast. Remember, we just had an Ohio-class submarine that's got cruise missiles leave Norfolk. They came in for all of 2 days, did a warm seat swap, as we call it in the aviation industry, and then boogied on out towards the Middle East. That'll be arriving there in the coming days. Now, the other piece, too, is you can see, I actually say coming days, that'll be pretty fast. It'll be a little longer than that. But this is the AWACS, right? Advanced warning, looking for nuke stuff. Notice it's all the way up there to the north of Michigan. down to the southern borders. And then, of course, you can see it here headed up into Norway, out over the North Sea, over Germany, over Poland, those man-in-the-middle circles, right? That's going to be your AWACS. Now, here's the interesting one. Look at this sniffer right here. And the reason I want to show you this is because this is not an R135 sniffer. These are the Hilo sniffers. We got some new ones that just entered the fleet, but notice where they're headed, right? We got the DNC happening in Chicago up there in the Kenyan land. And notice there too near Buffalo. Again, they seem to be looking very closely at those border areas. They worried about something coming across at the northern border maybe. But this helicopter, let me just show you what this thing looks like. It's the new and improved Nuke Sniffer. So the older ones had all kinds of things hanging off. They're about 30 years old, and the technology has changed tremendously. And so what you're seeing here is a very high-tech new Nuke Sniffer Hilo. They've got 3 of them into the fleet now, and that is what we were actually just looking at on that flight that went over Chicago, and probably the one down over Atlanta. So it's just, it's a data point for you, but pay close attention to it because it does matter when they're looking for nukes for a reason. One thing I will point out, did you notice that when the RNC happened, we had no nuke sniffing activity over the RNC? Just goes to show you who's controlling all of these assets. It's not the good guys, all right? So, okay. Or as they would say, it's not the white hats, it's the black hats. All right, back over here to the main. Actually, sorry, I meant to go to the mini, and we're going to get into the gas side of it. Hit the wrong button. But this is going to be your tankers. Again, air refueling. This is probably a good indicator of fighter transitioning across the drink. You'll see some stuff coming in and out of Hawaii over the same left coast side, and then off of Florida up the eastern seaboard. When we look at the NOTAMs and the TFRs, some of this will start to make a little more sense. And then, of course, you can see, look at those long transitions across the drink, in and out of England, and then into Ramstein, and then into the Middle East. If you're in England, you probably have seen in the last couple of days a lot of fighter activity. This is why, okay? They're transferring a lot of fighter assets into the Middle East, which also is a big indicator. We're probably going to go hot here. I think that Russia and China don't want to go hot just yet. And then, of course, you can see out over Japan, again, fighter confirmation, right? A little bit off of Australia, which is kind of strange. But Russia and China, I don't believe, want to go to war right now. I think they see Trump as potentially getting into office, and they know that if they make any moves, they're going to get thumped. Because Trump is not going to mess around if he gets into office. He's going to shut off the funding into Ukraine. Russia, all they need to do is buy time. The bigger impact would be to China, because Trump is certainly going to punch them right in the wallet as soon as he gets in. So that would probably be my bigger concern if I had to say any two that may actually try to make a move before this happens. My bigger concern isn't those two. It's what we have in office, or lack thereof, and that are the people that would be, the Harris and the Biden, because neither one of them have leadership skills. God help us if we get into a war with them at the helm, because it's going to be ugly. They're going to make bad decisions, and because they're not capable of doing that, performing that as a military leader or commander. So this could get really interesting, and that's the thing that I am probably more concerned about than anything else, is that they may try to instigate a war prematurely to get us fully engaged, to just have wheels off here, because we have this big election coming up. Sad to say when you can't trust your government as far as you can throw them, and that's what they're up to, right? You know it. Okay, now speaking of, wheels on the bus go round and round, let's just take a look. We got, looks like Flashbang headed up to Maryland, and then this is just the fact. This is their whole MO. It's always a lie, nonstop, constant lying right here. So the two of them together are going to come out and basically try to tell people the progress they're making to lower the costs for the American people. Yeah, you heard that correctly. So let's get over here and take a look at how well they have done. So In the United States, price increases for gasoline, food, and housing drove inflation in 2021. Higher energy costs caused the inflation to rise further in 2022. Well, we're at 2024. It continues to go, but it peaked at 9.1%, a high not seen since 1981. And if you think it has changed in the last 2 years since they've been running things, it has not. It's gotten worse. You all know it. You feel it. You see it in everything that you do. All right. Okay, now look at this. Pro-Palestinians crash a Harris event in New York, hurling smoke bombs. So guess what? They're not happy with the current administration. And what's funny is these are the folks, most of them are the ones that are being brought over by the current administration. So they're bringing them in, and of course, they are just getting crazy here in the streets. And this is going to continue at 1,000,000%, but you can just look at the folks that are in here and know that those are probably not Americans, right? More than likely, most of them are illegals. And of course, they are out here raising a big stink. And I imagine DNC is going to be no different, all right? Okay, look at this. A man impersonating the Secret Service agent was spotted checking backpacks at the J.D. Vance event in Detroit. This is a picture of the gentleman. He certainly looks like somebody that may even be on a most wanted list. In fact, it looks like the gentleman that we just saw an image of that said that we've got these people coming into our country, tried to they're here to assassinate Trump, etc. And it looks very similar, doesn't it? So, nonetheless, this guy shows up wearing green fatigues, throws on a Secret Service patch. Well, you got police right here behind him, and he's going through people's backpacks. More than likely, this is how you get IEDs, et cetera, into events or around events. And so very bad. The fact that this is happening just goes to show you that we're at the whole new level of craziness and what their tactics will be and what they're willing to attempt. All right. All right. Hey, once again, as we get into what did Trump just say yesterday? If you saw the video, he said, no, we will not comply. Thus, my shirt says the exact same thing. This is going to come in handy because look at this. We're into an election cycle, and yet again, they're going to hit the spike on this global health emergency. Get ready for the lockdowns because I don't think it'll be this. This is just going to be one of probably a multitude of things they throw at us, but they have declared a global health emergency yet again for monkeypox. So it seems to basically pop up and pop down. And of course, this is the big key takeaway, right? People that are, the left, so to speak. So let's just move on. Okay. Here's, speaking of selling lies, they come out, the economy, this is what we're doing to reduce the, inflation and make things more affordable for everyday Americans. And at the same time, the Biden-Harris deportation program has sent away just 10% of illegal aliens in the United States. Yeah, the reality is, and you'll hear a lot of politicians try to make their stump speech about we're slowing down what's coming across the border. It's a lot less than it used to be. No, that's because this, folks, they're flying them in. You get over here to the Omni conglomerate, which are just a bunch of cargo management companies all tied together here. You can see, what is that? Border. It's down to Central America, okay? And then into Miami, they bring them into a hub. They put them on flights. They bring them in and fly them on commercial airlines up into the interior of our country, bypassing the borders completely. All right. Now you get over to Europe, it gets a little bit different because this is more than likely troop movement. And you'll notice where they're headed into the main primary areas. We have U.S. military bases. And then notice this one that just kind of comes down. It goes around Israel and into Kuwait. Now that may or may not be troops. All right. Just want you to see that. So when you hear them talking about the numbers being down, the reality is, no, they're not down. They are just basically masking it and bypassing the area that, like Eagle Pass, that we would normally see the high numbers. Which, by the way, if you notice, all of that activity or most of that activity transferred over as soon as Abbott put in Operation Lone Star and started throwing up the buoys again and shutting down and taking over the Eagle Pass location. What happened? All the NGOs shifted them over to Southern California. All right, let's take a look at the NOTAMs that are currently up. This one's an interesting one. I don't even know why it has that pattern. All you had to do is just put a big circle or a square like these out here. This is almost, this is a Jewish star, but that's probably not intentional, or maybe it is. But this is just a teal aircraft. This is the current Hurricane that's out there. I think it's a Cat 2. If we get over here to this side, you can see this activity. This is exactly where they're looking and what they're doing. That's all of that. So they're going to be going in and out with the Hurricane Hunter, and that's what you see here. Okay, very strange though, I have to admit. Now, the other NOTAMs you should pay attention to is just notice how the expansion of these boxes on the East Coast continues on. These are all danger boxes. That tells you that we are at a certain level and a certain tempo along both of our borders, that on the ocean front, that they are watching very closely and that they are monitoring probably for Club Ks and ship traffic and all the other stuff that's out here. Okay. Now, the other piece that I think is more concerning than probably this is the fact that they have just expanded the circle around Washington, D.C. This inside darker one is what you normally see. Right now, they've got this giant one completely around Washington. And then, of course, this big one, that means Flashbang's headed to the bunker this weekend into Camp David. So, again, that is a little concerning given this, as well as even the size of this. That's a bigger area around Camp David that we normally see. Usually it's a smaller circle right here like these on the inside, sometimes even smaller than that. So that's a very large box. And then this, let's see if it pulls up Mill Op. Okay, so just heads up there. You got a little Mill Op going on in Virginia. Sorry, West Virginia. And then you get out over this side of the house and you'll just see the normal stuff that we see over the United States. All right. Then this is that area. We just had a big exercise out here. I've shown you the ship traffic that comes by here. That's what this is all about. They are watching the ships. Everything that passes through here, they've got eyes on. And don't see anything in Hawaii for once. Kind of unusual. Let me back it up just a little bit. Looks like some things over Iceland. Little missile box here to the north of Russia into the Barents Sea. And then, as always, this stuff is just complete cover up. Saudis got their own little boxes going on here, but this area is just chock full into Ukraine, etc. All right, moving on. Now, speaking of NOTAMs and TFRs, the other piece to all of this is pay attention to the jamming aspect. This is GPS jamming. This is 2 days old. But the big piece is just notice everything that, like, Israel's completely covered up from a GPS perspective, right? And then you get up along this area as well into the Black Sea, over into Russia, which I find very interesting, around Russia. So there's a lot of GPS stuff. And then Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, pretty hot and heavy. And let me pop us over here to the United States. I just, out of curiosity, what we've got going on. And the only spots really in the United States, you can see some light GPS interference here in these areas, but you can see it down here near the military base as well, right there near Del Rio. Okay, everything else looks to be, got a little bit here in this area where North Libya there towards the Mediterranean. And all right, so that will take us through that piece. Let's get over here and look at Biggs Army Airfield just to see what's been going on. Notice you do still have the intelligence flights operating out of that location. Some spa stuff showing up. That's going to be Sierra Pacific. And they're coming in from Fort Hood, small flight, 737. And then, of course, that went back to their home base operations in Tucson. So we may see a little rotation here, some troops being processed through. We're certainly sending troops all around the world right now, and it's very evident to me that this current administration could be pushing for a war prematurely. All right. Okay, Atlas Airs, you're just going to see the stuff coming inbound. This is Dover, some really large aircraft in, very active and busy. Normally we get over here to the Dover side of the house, and what do we see? We get a lot of Cessna 172s, this stuff here. But Atlas Airs, a lot of 747s. Where they headed to Europe, one's headed over to Israel, the other to RZE Poland. All right, let's move on over here to Europe as we're speaking about the camber flights, and you're just going to see the headed into Germany. Looks to be headed into RZE Poland, and actually this flight left out of Frankfurt, Germany, headed down to Kuwait. Right, and then we're looking at the Brits version of all of this. Some of this, like this one right here, I'm pretty confident is an R135. But you'll just notice they're coming out of the Middle East as well. And then up here into the Norway side of the house. All right, Ramstein. What do we have arriving? A bunch of large wide bodies. We do have C-130s. I think this is also C-130 activity. Not sure what the Spade is, but that's headed back to Wiesbaden. That could be one of the base commanders, just in a different aircraft. We normally see them running out of that location. And then, of course, Atlas Air is headed back to the United States. Okay, now you have seen my coverage on the Nord Stream. I've shown you the P-8 flights. The United States was 100%, the Navy, behind taking out the Nord Stream. This I find interesting. It's almost like, you've got your patsies. Could they have been involved? Absolutely. You probably had some people on ground as well, because there were multiple locations that were taken out. This could be the part that was in the multiple side that wasn't the P-8 activity. But check us out. Germany issues an arrest warrant for Ukrainian citizen Vladimir Z. Doesn't really give the full name. I do find that interesting. Over the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Be interesting if that was old Zelensky. But the individual they've grabbed, or they issued the arrest warrant for, we'll see what happens when it comes down to it. But this person, you get somebody in, and you put the pressure on them, and they typically start squealing like a pig. So we'll see what happens here. But you may have somebody that comes in and basically spills the beans on the U.S.'s involvement. All right. Speaking of beans, here we go. RZE Poland. This is going to be your forward operating base for Ukraine. It's just kind of go through. I'm looking for the wide body stuff to see. We've got, there's Duke 28 from Wiesbaden. That's a base commander. Camber flight 747. And go down a little further. Another camber flight coming in. Those are the Dover camber flights on the arrival, scheduled arrival board. And then departure-wise, it looks like that's a Coletta Air it's leaving. So not as busy as it was the last time we checked in, but it's still, nonetheless, we continue to push stuff into that country. All right. Russia ready to execute nuclear attacks on NATO targets, and that's according to leaked documents. So somebody, this is what's really interesting, is if you go look at the plans that were drawn up between 2008 and 2014, who was in office during that time? Yeah, Ben Kenyon was in there. Actually, 2008, that would have been the Kenyon. But I think that's the Kenyon. Nonetheless, a lot of that was right in his wheelhousing. And so this, the fact that they have already drawn all that stuff means they had targets early on. And this just tells you Russia is said to have north of 5,500 nuclear warheads in its arsenal, while the U.S. only has 5,000, meaning the two countries control some 90% of nukes today. So will the nukes come out? Very likely. If we go into World War III, somebody's going to pop one off. There's no doubt about that. All right. All right. And then last up here, this is going to be the Germans. And I've been showing you that they are on the move. And you'll just notice some of the locations here down towards Sri Lanka, into the Middle East, into other areas of, down into kind of the Mediterranean side, Greece, etc. And then you can see them headed back into Germany. So Germans have been very active as of late. So we'll have to keep close eyes on them just to see what they're up to. All right. Well, listen, that is going to do it for our SITREP today. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And if you are over here in the chat, the live chat on Patreon, we will be continuing on with the Q&A here immediately after this. So you guys sit tight, and we'll talk here shortly. God bless. Monkey out. Artisan handcrafted soaps. Get yours in the Monkey Werx shop today.